Welcome to English Mastery. Today, we invite you to discover a classic masterpiece of mystery and love, The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. At English Mastery, we believe that the best way to learn English is through great stories. That is why we created this special version, adapted specifically for our students. Join us on this journey. Improve your listening skills, and let's master English together. Chapter 1. Is it the ghost? It was a special evening at the Paris Opera House. The two managers, Mr. Debienne and Mr. Poligny, were leaving their jobs. They were having a big party to say goodbye. Suddenly, some young dancers ran into the dressing room of La Sorelli, a famous dancer. They were very afraid. Some were laughing nervously and others were crying in terror. Sorelli was angry. She wanted to be alone to practice her speech for the managers. "What is happening?" Sorelli asked. Little Jeanne, a young girl with a pale face and trembling voice, answered, "It's the ghost!" She quickly locked the door. Sorelli was a person who easily believed in strange and scary stories. She was the first person to believe in ghosts. She looked at Jeanne and asked, "Did you see him?" "Yes, as clearly as I see you now," Jeanne answered. She was so scared that she sat down on a chair. Her legs were shaking. Then another young dancer, little Giry, added, "If that was the ghost, he is very, very ugly." "Oh yes!" all the girls cried together. The girls explained what happened. The ghost appeared in the hallway. He looked like a gentleman in a black suit. He stood in front of them suddenly, and nobody knew where he came from. It was like he walked through the wall. For several months, everyone at the opera talked about this ghost. He walked through the building like a shadow. He spoke to nobody, and nobody was brave enough to speak to him. He disappeared as soon as someone saw him. He made no noise when he walked. At first, people laughed at the story, but soon everyone was afraid. If someone fell or lost a small object, they said, "It is the ghost. It is the opera ghost." But who really saw him? There are many men in black suits at the opera, but this suit was different. The girls said it covered a skeleton, and of course, the ghost had the face of a dead man. Was all this story serious? The truth is that the idea of the skeleton came from Joseph Bouquet. Joseph was a serious and steady man. He worked at the opera, and he really saw the ghost. He met the ghost on some small stairs near the stage. He saw him for only a second before the ghost ran away. Joseph told his story to everyone. "He is incredibly thin," Joseph said. "His black suit hangs on his body like it's on a skeleton. His eyes are very deep. You can only see two big black holes, like in a dead man's head. His skin is a terrible yellow color. He has no nose. It is a horrible thing to look at. And he only has a few long dark hairs on his head." People listened to Joseph with great interest. Soon other people said they also saw a man with the face of a dead man. At first, serious people laughed at the story. They thought it was a joke. But then many strange things happened. For example, a fireman is a very brave man. He is not afraid of anything, especially fire. But one day, the fireman went into the dark rooms under the opera. Suddenly, he ran back to the stage. He was pale and trembling. He almost fainted in the arms of a woman. Why was he so afraid? Because he saw something impossible. In the dark, at the level of his head, he saw a head of fire. And there was no body with the head, just a burning head moving toward him in the dark. The story of the fireman, whose name was Pampin, was real. All the dancers at the opera were very afraid now. They thought, the ghost is dangerous. He can change his head. Sometimes he has a skeleton head, and sometimes a head of fire. The girls were terrified. They ran quickly past every dark corner and every dark hallway. Even the famous dancer Sorelli was afraid. The next day she put a horseshoe on a table near the entrance. In many countries, a horseshoe brings good luck. Every person who worked at the opera had to touch it for protection before they went upstairs. Now let's go back to that evening in Sorelli's dressing room. "It's the ghost!" little Jean had cried. Inside the room, it was very, very quiet. You could only hear the girls breathing. Suddenly, Jean whispered, "Listen." Everyone heard a strange noise outside the door. It was not the sound of footsteps. It was a soft, light sound, like silk sliding against the wood. Then the noise stopped. Sorelli tried to be brave. She went to the door and asked in a shaking voice, "Who is there?" Nobody answered. Sorelli felt that all the girls were watching her. She tried to be more brave and asked loudly, "Is anyone behind the door?" "Oh, yes, someone is there," cried little Meg Jerry. She held Sorelli's skirt to stop her. "Please don't open the door. Oh, please." But Sorelli took a small knife for protection. She turned the key and opened the door. The other girls ran to the back of the room, and Meg cried, "Mother! Mother!" Sorelli looked into the hallway bravely. It was empty. One small gaslight burned with a strange red color, but the corners were still very dark. Sorelli quickly closed the door again and sighed. "No," she said, "there is no one there." "But we saw him!" Jean cried. She walked back to Sorelli with small, nervous steps. "He is hiding somewhere. I am too afraid to stay here alone. Let's all go down together to hear the manager's speech." To protect themselves from bad luck, the girls touched their rings and made secret signs with their hands. "Come, children," Sorelli said. "Be strong. Maybe no one has really seen the ghost." "Yes, yes, we saw him," the girls cried. "He had the face of a dead man and a black suit, just like Joseph Bouquet said." "And Gabriel, the music teacher, saw him too," Jean added. "He saw the ghost standing behind a mysterious man called the Persian. Gabriel was so scared that he ran out of the office, fell down the stairs, and hurt himself. He told everyone, 'I saw the ghost. He has the face of a dead man, exactly like Joseph Bouquet said.'" Jeanne finished her story very quickly. She was out of breath, as if the ghost were running behind her. For a moment, it was very quiet. Then, little Meg Jerry spoke. "Joseph Bouquet should be quiet," she said. "He shouldn't talk about the ghost." "Why?" the other girls asked. Meg lowered her voice. She looked around the room to see if anyone was listening. "That is my mother's opinion," she whispered. "Mother says the ghost doesn't like it when people talk about him." The other girls were very curious now. They crowded around Meg. They were afraid, but they wanted to know more. I promised not to tell, Meg said. But the girls promised to keep the secret. Finally, Meg looked at the door and began. Well, it's because of the box, Meg whispered. What box? The girls asked. The ghost's box. You know, a private box is a special place to sit in the theater. It has red curtains and a great view of the stage. The ghost has box 5. It is on the first floor, near the stage, on the left. That's impossible, the girls cried. It is true, Meg said. My mother is in charge of that box, but you must swear, don't say a word to anyone. Nobody has used that box for over a month except the ghost. The managers gave an order. Box 5 must never be sold. And does the ghost really go there? Yes, Meg said. Then does someone actually sit there? The girls asked. No, the ghost comes, but there is nobody there. The dancers looked at each other. They didn't understand. If the ghost has a black suit and the face of a dead man, people must see him. They tried to explain this to Meg, but she answered, That's the secret. You cannot see the ghost. He has no suit and no head. All the stories about his skeleton face and his head of fire are not true. You only hear him when he is in the box. My mother has never seen him, but she has heard him. Mother knows because she gives him a program for the show. Sorelli interrupted. Jerry, you are playing a joke on us. Little Meg began to cry. I should be quiet. If my mother knows I told you. But I am right. Joseph Bouquet should not talk about the ghost. It will bring him bad luck. My mother said so last night. Suddenly, there was a sound of fast and heavy footsteps in the hallway. A loud, breathless voice cried, Cécile, Cécile, are you there? What is happening? Said Jean. She opened the door. A serious-looking woman ran into the room and fell into a chair. Her face was red, and she looked very upset. How awful, she said. How awful! What? What happened? Joseph Bouquet! What about him? Joseph Bouquet is dead! The room was filled with screams and loud voices. Everyone wanted to know what happened. Yes, the woman said. They found him in the dark rooms under the stage. He was hanging there. It's the ghost, little Meg cried, but she quickly covered her mouth with her hands. No, no, I didn't say it. I didn't say it. Chapter 2. The New Star. On the stairs, Sorelli met the Count Philippe de Chagny. He was a rich and famous aristocrat. The Count was usually a very calm man, but tonight he was very excited. Sorelli, what an evening, he said, and Christine Daae, she was amazing. It was a triumph. Impossible, said little Meg Giry. 6 months ago she was a terrible singer. But Count, we cannot talk about her now. We must go. We are going to find out about the poor man who died tonight. The manager of the opera ran past them. Don't talk about the dead man tonight, he said. It is the last day for the old managers. We don't want to upset them. They went into the main hall. The Count was right. It was a wonderful night. Many famous singers performed, but the real star was Christine Daae. Before this night, Christine was not famous. She usually played small parts, but tonight she sang instead of La Carlotta, who was ill. No one had ever heard a voice like Christine's. It was heavenly. The whole audience stood up. They shouted, clapped, and cheered. Christine was so emotional that she fainted, and her friends had to carry her to her dressing room. The audience was surprised. Why was such a great singer a secret for so long? Where did she learn to sing like that? Christine said she practiced alone. It was a mystery. The Count de Chagny sat in his box and clapped loudly. Count Philippe de Chagny was 41 years old. He was a rich and handsome aristocrat. He was very polite and came from an old, famous family. He was the head of his family and looked after his younger brother, Raoul. Raoul was 21 years old, but he looked much younger. He was a handsome young man with blonde hair and blue eyes. Raoul was a sailor in the Navy. He was a very shy and gentle person. He grew up with his sisters and an old aunt, so he had very polite and kind manners. Everyone loved him because he was so innocent and sweet. Count Philippe was very proud of his brother. He wanted Raoul to see the beautiful life of Paris. Philippe took him everywhere, to the best restaurants, to parties, and to the opera. That evening, they sat together in their private box. When Christine Daae finished her song, Philippe looked at his brother. Raoul's face was very pale. He looked shocked. "Look, Philippe," Raoul said. "That woman, she is fainting." "You look like you are fainting too," the Count answered. "What is the matter, Raoul?" Raoul stood up quickly. He looked worried. "Let's go and see her," Raoul said. "I know her, but she never sang like that before. Something is different." Count Philippe smiled at his younger brother. He saw that Raoul was very impatient. They went to the stage, and Raoul was moving so fast that he accidentally tore his gloves. He didn't even notice. The area behind the stage was crowded with people. There were actors, dancers, and workers everywhere. Everyone was shouting, "Daae! Daae!" Philippe was surprised. Raoul knew the way to Christine's room. The Count thought, "Wait, I never showed him this hallway. Did he come here alone before?" They reached Christine's dressing room. It was full of people because Christine did not open her eyes and she did not move. The theater doctor arrived, and Raoul followed him inside. When Christine finally opened her eyes, she was in Raoul's arms. Raoul looked at the other men in the room and said coolly, "Doctor, please ask these gentlemen to leave. There is no air here. She cannot breathe." The doctor agreed and sent everyone away. Even the managers of the opera had to wait outside. Philippe stood in the hallway and laughed quietly. "Look at my little brother. He looks so shy, but he is a real man." Inside the room, Christine sighed. She looked at the doctor, then at her maid, and finally at Raoul. "Sir," she whispered, "who are you?" Raoul knelt on one knee. He took her hand and kissed it. "Mademoiselle," he replied, "I am the little boy who went into the sea to save your scarf." Christine looked at the doctor and the maid. They all began to laugh. Raoul felt very embarrassed, and his face turned red. "Mademoiselle," he said, "you don't remember me, but I must tell you something very important in private." "Please wait until I feel better," Christine said. Her voice was shaking. "You are very kind, but you must go now." The doctor smiled and told Raoul to leave the room. Suddenly, Christine stood up. She had a lot of energy now. "Thank you, doctor," she said, "but I want to be alone. Everyone, please leave me. I feel very nervous tonight." The doctor and Raoul went out into the hallway. The theater was empty and quiet now. Raoul did not want to leave. He felt a terrible pain in his heart. He stayed in the dark hallway and waited. Suddenly, the door opened and the maid came out with some bags. "How is Christine?" Raoul asked. "She is fine," the maid laughed, "but don't go into her room now. She wants to be alone." Raoul thought, "She wants to be alone? For me? She wants to talk to me privately." He walked quietly to the door. He wanted to knock, but then he stopped. He heard a man's voice inside the room. The man spoke in a strong, commanding voice. "Christine, you must love me." And Christine answered. Her voice was very sad, and she was crying. "How can you say that?" she whispered. "I sing only for you." Raoul felt a terrible pain again. His heart was beating so loudly that he thought everyone could hear it. He came from a very important family, and here he was, listening behind a door like a spy. He felt very ashamed, but he could not move. The man's voice spoke again. "Are you very tired?" "Oh, tonight I gave you my soul," Christine replied. "I am exhausted." "Your soul is beautiful, child," the voice answered. "Thank you. Even the angels cried tonight because your music was so wonderful." Raoul heard nothing after that. He waited in the dark corner. He wanted to see the man. He wanted to know, "Who is my rival?" Suddenly, the door opened. Christine Daae came out. She was alone. She wore a warm coat and a veil over her face. She walked past Raoul and did not see him. She did not lock the door. Raoul waited, but the door did not open again. No one came out. Finally, he ran to the door, opened it, and went inside. It was completely dark. "Someone is here," Raoul cried. His voice was shaking. "Why are you hiding? Answer me!" There was only silence. Raoul was very angry now. "You cannot leave this room. If you don't answer, you are a coward." He struck a match. The small light lit up the room. Raoul looked everywhere. He looked in the cupboards. He touched the walls, but there was no one in the room. "Am I going mad?" Raoul asked himself. He stood in the empty room for 10 minutes. He heard nothing. He walked out of the room. He felt lost and confused. Suddenly, he felt a cold wind on his face. He was at the bottom of some stairs. Some workers were carrying a stretcher with a white sheet. "Where is the exit, please?" Raoul asked. "Straight in front of you," a worker said. "But please move. Let us pass." Raoul looked at the white sheet. "What is that?" he asked. "This is Joseph Bouquet. We found him under the stage. He was hanging there." Raoul took off his hat and stepped back. He walked out of the theater into the cold night. Chapter 3. The Mysterious Reason. While Raoul was in the dark hallway, a big party was beginning in another part of the theater. The two managers, Mr. Debienne and Mr. Poligny, were leaving the opera forever. It was their last night. The party was in the foyer, a large, beautiful room where the dancers wait. All the rich and famous people of Paris were there. They were drinking champagne and talking loudly. The dancers were there too. Some were in their normal clothes, but most of them still wore their white ballet skirts. They all looked serious because it was a sad day. Only little Jeanne was happy. She was only 15 years old. She already forgot about the ghost and the death of Joseph Bouquet. She was laughing and playing. In Paris, People often wear masks. When they are sad, they smile. When they are happy, they look bored. The two managers smiled and laughed with everyone, but under their smiles, they were very sad to leave the opera. Sorelli, the lead dancer, stood in the center of the room. She wanted to give a special speech to the managers. But suddenly, little Jeanne screamed, "The opera ghost!" She pointed her finger at the crowd. Everyone looked. They saw a face. It was very pale and very ugly. There were two deep black holes where the eyes should be. It looked like a skull, a death's head. "The ghost! The ghost!" people shouted. Everyone laughed. They thought it was a joke. They wanted to give the ghost a drink, but he was gone. He moved through the crowd like a shadow and disappeared. No one could find him. Sorelli was very angry. She could not finish her speech. The managers kissed her, said thank you, and ran away very fast. They looked very afraid. They went to their private office for one last supper with their friends. At the final supper, the old managers met the new managers, Mr. Moncharmin and Mr. Richard. They were all smiling and very polite. The old managers gave the new managers two small master keys. These keys could open thousands of doors in the opera house. Everyone wanted to see the keys. They were passing them from hand to hand. But suddenly, the room became quiet. At the end of the long table, people saw a strange face again. It was the same pale face with hollow eyes from the foyer. It was the ghost. He sat there, very natural, but he did not eat and he did not drink. In the foyer, people laughed at him, but here no one laughed. Everyone felt cold and sad when they looked at him. The ghost did not say a word. No one saw when he sat down. He looked like a dead man sitting with the living. The new managers thought, he is a friend of the old managers. The old managers thought, he is a guest of the new managers. So no one asked, who are you? Some people remembered the stories about the ghost. They said the ghost had no nose, but this man had a nose. However, one manager later wrote that the man's nose looked transparent and very thin. Perhaps it was a false nose made of plastic or wax. Was it really the ghost? It is hard to say. It was a very strange and impossible situation. Later, Mr. Moncharmin wrote in his book, "I will never forget that evening. We learned a dark secret from the old managers, and we saw that ghostly person at our table. We did not know him, and he did not belong there." While everyone was eating, the man with the skull face finally spoke. His voice was quiet but cold. "The ballet girls are right," he said. "The death of Joseph Buquet was not an accident. It was not natural." The old managers, Mr. Debienne and Mr. Poligny, were shocked. "Is Buquet dead?" they cried. "Yes," the shadow man replied. "They found him hanging under the stage tonight." The old managers turned white. They were more afraid than usual. They looked at the new managers and said, "Please come with us to the office. We must talk." Inside the private office, the old managers were very nervous. They asked the new managers, "Do you know that man at the table, the one who told us about Buquet?" "No," answered the new managers. "We don't know him." Then the old managers took the master keys back for a moment. They looked at them and said, listen to us. You must change all the locks in the opera. You must do it in secret. There are no thieves here, but there is something worse. The ghost."
The new managers, Richard and Moncharmin, began to laugh. They thought it was a big joke. They were sure the old managers wanted to scare them.
"Okay," Richard laughed. "Tell us about this ghost." But the old managers did not laugh. They were very serious. "The ghost told us to talk to you," they said. "He wants you to be nice to him. He wants you to give him everything he asks for." When we did not listen to the ghost, terrible things happened, and now Joseph Buquet is dead. The new managers continued to laugh. They thought the old managers were crazy.
Finally, Richard asked, "Okay, so what does your ghost want? What does he need?"
Mr. Pollini went to his desk and took out a large book. This was the official rule book of the opera. Every manager must follow these rules. "Look at the end of the book," Pollini said. The new managers looked. Usually the rules were written in black ink, but at the end there was a new paragraph. It was written in red ink. The handwriting was strange and ugly, like a child's writing. It said, "Rule 5. Every month the manager must pay 20,000 francs to the opera ghost."
Richard and Moncharmin looked at each other. 20,000 francs was a lot of money. "Is that all?" Richard asked, still laughing. "Does he want anything else?"
"Yes," replied Pollini. He turned the page to the section about the best seats in the theater. There was another note in red ink. Box number 5 must be empty for the opera ghost for every performance. The new managers stood up and shook hands with the old managers. "This is a wonderful joke," they said. "Now we understand why you are leaving. It is impossible to work with a ghost who wants so much money." "It is not a joke," Mr. Pollini said. His face was very serious. "We lost a lot of money because of Box 5. We could not sell tickets for that box. We cannot work for a ghost anymore. We want to go away."
"But," Richard said, "you are too kind. If a ghost is a problem, call the police. Arrest him when he sits in his box."
"But we cannot," the old managers cried together. "We have never seen him in his box." Chapter 4. Box 5. The two new managers were very different men. Mr. Moncharmin was rich and loved to write books about his life. He didn't know much about music, but he was very polite. Mr. Firmin Richard, however, was a famous composer. He loved music, but he had a very quick temper. He got angry very easily. At first, they were very happy. They loved being the heads of the magnificent opera. They completely forgot the scary stories about the ghost. They thought it was just a joke from the old managers. But one morning, at 11 o'clock, Mr. Richard arrived at his office. His secretary showed him some private letters. One letter was special. The address on the envelope was written in red ink. Richard remembered that handwriting. It was the same clumsy, childish writing from the rule book. He opened the letter and read, "Dear Mr. Manager, I am sorry to trouble you. I know you are very busy with the theater. I see what you are doing for the singers and dancers. In my opinion, La Carlotta sings like a noisy machine. La Sorelli only has success because of her friends. And little Jam dances like a baby cow in a field. I am not talking about Christine Daae. She is a genius, but you are jealous of her. You can do your business as you want, but tonight I want to hear Christine Daae sing. And I have one important request. Do not sell my box today or any other day. I was very surprised and angry because you sold my box to other people. The old managers, Mr. Debienne and Mr. Poligny, were always very kind to me. They told me that you know all about my rules. If you want to live in peace, do not take away my private box. The letter from the ghost ended with the words, "Your servant, Opera Ghost." Soon, Mr. Moncharmin entered the office with a second letter. It was exactly the same. The two managers laughed. "They are continuing the joke," said Mr. Richard, "but it is not funny anymore." "What do they want?" asked Mr. Moncharmin. "Do the old managers want a free box for tonight?" Mr. Richard called his secretary. "If box 5 is not sold, send the tickets to the old managers, Mr. Debienne and Mr. Poligny." The tickets were free, so they sent them. The new managers thought, "Our friends are acting like children. They are even writing fake letters in red ink." The whole day was very busy. The managers talked to many singers and dancers. They signed new contracts and worked until late at night. They were so tired that they went to bed early. They did not even look at box 5 to see if their friends were there. The next morning, the managers received a thank you card. It was from the ghost again. "Dear Mr. Manager, thank you. It was a charming evening. Christine Daae was wonderful, but the other singers were boring. I will write to you soon about my money, 240,000 francs. Kind regards, O.G." But then they opened another letter. This one was truly from the old managers, Mr. Debienne and Mr. Poligny. "Gentlemen, thank you for the tickets, but we cannot use box 5. You know that box 5 belongs only to him. We told you this when we gave you the rule book. Please remember Rule 98. "Oh, these men are starting to make me angry," shouted Mr. Richard. He was very frustrated. That evening he gave a clear order: sell box 5 to the public. The next morning, the managers read a report about a problem in box 5. The inspector wrote, "Last night, some people in box 5 were laughing and shouting. They were very loud during the opera. Other people in the theater were angry and said, 'Shh.' I told them to be quiet, but they continued to laugh. Finally, I called a guard and we sent them away." Mr. Richard was angry. He called the inspector to his office. "Tell me," Richard said, "why were those people laughing?" "Sir," the inspector replied, "I think they were not serious. When they entered the box, they ran out immediately. They called the woman who works there, the box keeper, and said, 'Look, there is no one in the box, right?' The woman said, 'No, it is empty.' But the people said, 'When we went inside, we heard a voice saying that the box was taken.'" Mr. Moncharmin smiled, but Mr. Richard did not. He hated this joke. The inspector saw Moncharmin smile and smiled too, but Richard looked at him with a very angry face, and the inspector stopped smiling immediately. "But was the box empty when they arrived?" Richard shouted. "Yes, sir, completely empty. the inspector cried. "The box-keeper said it was a joke." "A joke?" Richard was furious. "And what did the box-keeper say exactly?" "Oh," the inspector replied, "she just said it was the opera ghost, that's all." The inspector laughed a little, but it was a mistake. Mr. Richard became even more furious. "Bring the box-keeper here," he shouted. "Bring her to me now. I want to talk to her." The managers sent for the box-keeper. Her name was Madame Giry. She was an old woman in a poor dress, but she looked very proud. "Tell me, Madame Giry," Mr. Richard said angrily, "what happened in box 5 last night?" Madame Giry looked at him calmly. "The ghost was annoyed again," she said. The managers wanted to laugh, but she continued, "You don't understand. Nobody can see the ghost in his box, but everyone can hear him. He is always there. He even broke a man's leg once." "What?" Mr. Moncharmin asked. "How did he break a man's leg?" Madame Giry smiled. "It was during the opera Faust. A man named Mr. Maniera was in box 5 with his wife and their friend Isidore. Suddenly, Mr. Maniera heard a secret voice in his ear. The voice told him that his wife and Isidore were being too friendly. The managers listened, surprised. Mr. Maniera became very angry, Madame Giry said. He started a fight in the box. Poor Isidore was so afraid that he ran out of the room. He ran down the stairs so fast that he fell and broke his leg. So you see, it was the ghost's fault. The ghost knows everything that happens in his box." Mr. Richard shouted, "This is crazy. I don't believe in ghosts." But Madame Giry only shook her head. "Mr. Debienne and Mr. Poligny didn't believe me at first either, but now they are gone, and the ghost is still here." "But have you ever spoken to the ghost?" Mr. Moncharmin asked, smiling. "Yes, sir, many times," Madame Giry replied. "And what does he say to you?" "Well, he usually asks me for a footstool." The managers burst out laughing. "A ghost needs a footstool? Is the ghost a woman?" "No, he has a man's voice," she said, "a very beautiful and kind voice. Usually, in the middle of the first act, I hear 3 little taps on the door of box 5. Tap, tap, tap. I open the door, but the box is empty. Then the voice says, 'Madame Jules, a footstool, please.' It is for his lady friend, I think." The managers looked at the inspector. The inspector pointed to his head, signaling that Madame Giry was crazy. But she continued her story. "The ghost is very generous, too. At the end of the opera, I often find money on the shelf in the box, sometimes 2 francs, sometimes 5. He leaves it there for me. Once I found a rose. Another time he left a lady's fan behind." "A fan?" Richard asked. "What did you do with it?" "I brought it back the next night, and you know what? The next morning the fan was gone, and in its place the ghost left me a box of English sweets. He knows I love them." "That is enough, Madame Giry," Mr. Richard said. He didn't believe her, but he was tired of the story. "You can go now." Chapter 5. The Magic Violin. After her great success at the opera, Christine changed. She did not want to sing.
She stayed in her room and refused to talk to anyone. People thought, is she too proud, or is she just shy? But the truth was different. Christine was afraid. She wrote a letter to the Count, Raoul's brother. "Please do not help me any more. I am not the mistress of my own destiny." She felt that something or someone was controlling her life. Raoul, the young Vicomte, tried to see her many times, but she always said no. Then, one morning, he received a small note from her. "Monsieur, I have not forgotten the little boy who ran into the sea to save my scarf. I am writing to you today because I am going to Perros. Tomorrow is the anniversary of my father's death. You knew him, and he loved you. He is buried there with his violin in the small churchyard. We played there when we were children." Raoul was very excited. He dressed quickly and ran to the train station. He missed the morning train, so he had to wait all day. Finally, in the evening, he sat in the train to Brittany. He read Christine's note again and again. He remembered their happy childhood together. The next morning, he arrived in the small town of Perros. He was the only passenger on the bus. He asked the driver about a young lady from Paris. "Yes," the driver said, "a beautiful lady arrived yesterday. She is staying at the inn called the Setting Sun." Raoul felt happy. He was very close to Christine now. As he walked, he remembered the story of the little Swedish singer and her father. Many years ago, in a small village in Sweden, there lived a poor man and his daughter, Christine. During the week, the father worked in the fields, but on Sundays he sang in the church. He was a great musician and played the violin better than anyone in Scandinavia. People invited him to every wedding and festival. When Christine was 6 years old, her mother died. Her father sold everything and went to the city to find fame, but he found only poverty. So they began to travel from town to town. The father played his melodies, and Christine sang by his side. One day, a famous professor heard them. He was amazed. He took them to France and gave Christine a good education. Christine was a beautiful girl, kind and very talented. She learned quickly and charmed everyone. But her father was often sad. He missed his home in the north. He stayed in his room for hours and played his violin very softly. He only felt better in the summer when the family went to Perros. The sea there was the same color as the sea in Sweden. He loved to play his music on the beach. He told Christine that even the sea stopped its noise to listen to his violin. Sometimes they traveled to small villages nearby. They dressed neatly and played music for the local people, but they refused to take any money. They slept on the straw in barns, just like when they were poor in Sweden. People followed them everywhere because the girl sang like an angel from heaven. One day, a little boy was walking with his teacher. He heard the girl's voice and could not leave. He followed her to the beach. Suddenly, a strong wind blew Christine's scarf into the sea. Christine cried, but the boy said, "Don't worry, I will get it for you." He ran into the water, even though his clothes became completely wet. He brought the scarf back to Christine. The boy's teacher was angry, but Christine laughed and kissed the boy. That boy was Raoul. During that summer, they played together every day. Raoul even started taking violin lessons from Christine's father. They both loved the same old stories and legends. They often went to small houses in the village and asked, "Please, do you have a story for us today?"
In the quiet evenings in Paros, Christine's father told the children stories. His favorite stories were about the north. One story was about a girl named Lottie. Lottie had golden hair and blue eyes, the father said. She was a kind girl, and she loved her violin. But most of all, Lottie loved to hear the angel of music when she went to sleep. Raoul looked at Christine. She also had golden hair and blue eyes. Christine thought Lottie was very lucky. "Who is the angel of music?" the children asked. "The angel visits every great musician at least once," the father explained. "Nobody can see the angel, but you can hear him. Sometimes he comes to children, and they start to play the violin perfectly at 6 years old. Sometimes he comes later, when people are sad. When you hear the angel's voice, your music becomes divine. People will say you are a genius." Little Christine asked, "Father, have you heard the angel?" The father shook his head sadly. But then he smiled and said, "You will hear him one day, my child. When I am in heaven, I will send him to you." At that time, the father was already ill. He had a bad cough. 3 years passed, and Raoul returned to Paros. He was a young man now. He went to the house where Christine lived with her father and Mrs. Valerius. When Christine entered the room, she saw Raoul, and her face became red. Raoul kissed her hand. They were not children anymore. They were shy and quiet. They walked in the garden and talked for a long time, but they did not talk about their feelings. When it was time to say goodbye, Raoul kissed her hand again and said, "Mademoiselle, I will never forget you." But in his heart, Raoul was sad. He was a nobleman, a vicomte, and he knew that he could not marry a poor singer. Finally, Raoul arrived at the inn in Paros. Christine was there. "You came," she said. Raoul looked at her. "I cannot live without you." Christine's face became very red. She laughed to hide her feelings. "Don't laugh," Raoul said seriously. "You wrote the letter. You knew I would come because I love you." "I wrote to you because I remembered our childhood," Christine said gravely. "I remembered the little girl I was. Perhaps it was a mistake to write." Raoul felt that Christine was hiding something. She wasn't angry, but she was distressed. "When you saw me in your room at the opera," Raoul asked, "why did you pretend you didn't know me? Why did you laugh?" Christine didn't answer. Raoul became angry because he was jealous. "I will answer for you," he shouted. "You didn't want me there because someone else was in the room. You didn't want him to see me." Christine looked at him coldly. "If someone was in my way that evening, Raoul, it was you. I told you to leave." "Yes," Raoul cried, "because you wanted to stay with the other man." "What are you saying?" Christine was shocked. "What other man?" "I am talking about the man," Raoul said, "to whom you said, 'I sing only for you. Tonight I gave you my soul.'" Christine grabbed Raoul's arm. She was very strong in that moment. "Were you listening behind the door?" she asked. "Yes," Raoul answered, "because I love you. I heard everything. He said to you, 'Christine, you must love me.'" Suddenly, Christine's face became white. She looked very ill and almost fell. "Go on," she whispered. "Tell me everything." "I heard him answer you," Raoul said. He said, "Your soul is beautiful, child. I thank you." Christine put her hand to her heart. She looked like a madwoman for a moment. Then 2 large tears fell down her cheeks. "Raoul!" she cried, but then she ran away and locked herself in her room. Raoul didn't know what to do. He was very sad. He waited for her all day, but she didn't come. He heard that she spent the morning at the church, praying at her father's grave. Raoul walked to the small churchyard alone. It was a strange and scary place. There were many old graves and white snow on the ground. But then he saw something amazing: beautiful red roses in the snow. Next to the roses, there was a wall made of old bones and skulls. In Brittany, it was normal for old churches to have walls like this. Raoul stood there between the beautiful flowers and the cold bones. Raoul sat on the cliff. It was dark and cold. Suddenly, a voice behind him asked, "Do you think the spirits will come tonight?" It was Christine. She looked serious. "Raoul, do you remember the legend of the angel of music? My father is in heaven now, and he sent the angel to me. The angel visits me every day." Raoul thought she was talking about her talent. "Yes," he said, "your voice is a miracle. No teacher on earth can teach you to sing like that." "But Raoul," Christine said seriously, "the angel comes to my dressing room at the opera. He gives me lessons there, and you heard him too." I heard the angel?" Raoul was confused. "Yes, that evening behind the door. It was the angel who said, 'You must love me.'" Raoul burst out laughing. He couldn't help it, but Christine was very angry. Her eyes flashed like fire. "Why are you laughing? Do you think it was a man's voice? I am an honest girl, Raoul. I don't lock myself in a room with men. You opened the door yourself. Was there anyone there?" "No," Raoul admitted. "The room was empty." "Then you see, it was the angel." Raoul sighed. "Christine, I think someone is playing a trick on you." Christine cried out and ran away. Raoul went back to the inn feeling very sad. He went to bed, but he couldn't sleep. At 11:30, Raoul heard a sound in the next room. Someone was moving quietly. It was Christine. She wasn't sleeping. Raoul dressed quickly and waited. He heard her door open. He saw her white dress in the moonlight as she walked down the stairs. He heard the landlady's voice whisper, "Don't lose the key." The door opened and locked. Raoul ran to his window. Below him, on the empty street, he saw Christine. The events at the opera were very strange. People were talking about the opera ghost, and the managers were worried. The police decided to start an official investigation to find the truth. A few weeks later, a police officer, Commissary Mifrod, called Raoul to his office. He wanted to know more about Raoul's trip to Brittany.
"Tell me, Monsieur de Chagny," the commissary said, looking at his notes. "What exactly did you see at the cemetery in Paris? We need to know who was there with Christine Daae."
Raoul closed his eyes and remembered that cold night. This is what he told the police. "It was almost midnight. The moon was bright on the white snow. I followed Christine to the churchyard. I didn't hide, but she didn't see me. She was in a dream. The churchyard was very quiet. There were only small crosses in the snow. Christine knelt by her father's grave and began to pray. Suddenly, the clock struck 12. At that moment I heard the most perfect music. It was a violin. Christine and I knew that melody. Her father used to play it when we were children. But this music was divine. I thought, is it really the angel of music? When the music stopped, I heard a strange sound. It came from the wall of old skulls and bones. It sounded like someone was laughing. I was terrified. Christine stood up and walked away, but I stayed. Suddenly, a skull rolled to my feet, then another and another. Someone was hiding behind the wall of bones. I saw a dark shadow. It ran into the church. I was faster than the shadow. I ran after it and grabbed the corner of its cloak. We stood in front of the altar. The moonlight shone through the window. The shadow turned around. I didn't see a man's face. I saw a terrible skull with burning eyes. It looked like the face of death itself. My heart stopped. I lost my courage and fell to the floor. I remember nothing more until I woke up at the inn. The commissary looked at Raoul with a serious face. A violin? A skull? Monsieur de Chagny, are you sure this was not a dream, or perhaps a very clever trick by a man? Raoul didn't answer. He knew what he saw, but the police wanted facts, not ghosts.
Chapter 6. A Visit to Box 5.
Mr. Richard and Mr. Moncharmin, the two new managers, decided to solve the mystery of Box 5.
The opera house was dark and very quiet. All the workers were away. The large hall looked strange in the shadows. The empty seats looked like dark waves of the sea, and the managers felt like sailors on a lonely ship. High above them, the statues on the ceiling seemed to laugh at them. "I feel a bit nervous," Mr. Moncharmin admitted later in his book. "The theater was too silent. Maybe it was just our imagination, but suddenly we both saw a shape in Box 5. The two men froze. They held each other's hands and stared at the dark box. "What do you see?" whispered one. "I see a skull on the ledge," answered Moncharmin.
"No," said Richard. "I see an old woman who looks like Madame Giry."
A few minutes later, the shape disappeared. The managers laughed at their fear and ran to Box 5 to check it. They went inside and turned on the lights. The box was completely normal. It had red velvet, a carpet, and ordinary chairs. They moved the furniture and looked under the carpet. They even examined the large armchair where the voice usually sat, but there was nothing, no ghosts, no magic, and no secret doors.
"People are making fools of us," Mr. Richard shouted. "There is no ghost here. I have an idea. On Saturday, we will watch the opera Faust from this box ourselves."